of arranging to meet with constituents, our representative releases videos mocking, insulting, and yes, cursing at them, at us. If a representative claims to be afraid to face the everyday people of their district, working class people, parents, veterans, retirees, it's time to elect new leadership. It is crystal clear that the time has come to replace Mace. The people of CD1 deserve a representative who is unafraid, who will rise to meet challenges, who cares about all the people in this district, and who will protect the greatness of our nation. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to talk to our family, friends, and neighbors, and we're going to work to find common ground while not sacrificing our values. We are going to use our data, our digital, and our grassroots tools to reach all of our voters. We're going to remember that Beaufort County voted nearly 47% Democratic in the 2018 congressional race. That was the midterm after Trump's first election, when Beaufort County helped turn CD1 blue. Let's do that again. We're going to ask all of you to join us and invest in our local party with your time and resources, because Beaufort County is worth fighting for. Finally, missed the line, and we are going to hold Nancy Mace accountable from now until the day we vote her out. Amen. Finally, I cannot end without an optimistic note. We are going to stay optimistic because we know that despite the challenges, the task before us is not insurmountable. We are not alone, and we are not blue dots. We, Democrats, are the blue heart of South Carolina. Please enjoy tonight's town hall and reach out to your local party tomorrow. Whether you protest, volunteer, or run for office, let's get in this fight together, because when we unite, we win. Thank you.
Thank y'all so much. So now the man of the hour, who I don't know needs a lot of introduction from me. Please welcome Congressman, and Congressman, I want to tell you too that Kathleen and Myra are both Clyburn Fellows.
Thank you.
But I want to welcome to the microphone Congressman James Clyburn.
Thank you.
Do you need the PowerPoint? You need to run the PowerPoint? You want me to run it?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Christopher. Thank you, Myra. And thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate being here with you. And that kind of energy is exactly what we need in these days. And thank you so much for the leadership that you are providing to our state and to Beaufort County. I really appreciate you. I want to thank all of you who are here, but most especially those with whom I've had such a long relationship over the years. I told a group up in Spartanburg night before last that if all goes well between now and July 21st, I'm going to celebrate the 46th anniversary of my 39th birthday. Those of you who are better in math than I was, that adds up to 85 years. And I'm proud of every one of those 85 years. And I want to thank you. Now, I see my college classmate, who's probably been masquerading as someone much younger. And I can tell you, he is president of our senior class, James Gilliard, and he is at least a year older than me. Tom Bonwell, thank you so much. We go way back. And the Campbells, thank you guys for being here. We served a long sentence as members of the Board of Trustees of Penn Community Center for several years. And Billy, Mayor Billy, thank you so much for your long as well. Thank you, Senator Matthews, for being here. I would have felt real bad if I come all the way down here and you not show up. And I'll tell your family on news that I know your family, and I know how well they raised you. Thank you. I told Crystal earlier that I was going to come to the mic before starting to answer questions, because some things I really wanted to say. But Myra, I think you've done it. You've saved me a lot of time with the stuff I've got on this paper here. And so thank you so much for covering the waterfront for us here this day. And so we can go directly into the Q&A. And I want to hear from you. If you've got any ideas, any suggestions you want to make, I want to hear them. But I'm going to start by asking Crystal to put up for me, I think it's slide number 2. Yeah. You know, Martin Luther King Jr., I was first introduced to Beaufort County back in the 60s. In fact, I think it may have been before. I came to Beaufort to sit down with Martin Luther King Jr. here at Penn Community Center at what became what we now used to call, I don't know what it is these days, the Retreat House. And many of you know that King did a lot of his writings here in this county. The Great March on Washington and the Poor People's Campaign. Those marches were planned and developed here at Penn Community Center. But there's one writing from Dr. King that was not done here. It was done while he was sitting in the Birmingham City Jail. And when King was sitting in that jail back in 1963, he received a letter from 8 clergymen. And in that letter, King saw a request from these 8 clergymen who said to him, by the way, one of those 8 had South Carolina connections. They said to him that they wanted him to leave Birmingham because he was a destructive force. And they went on to write in their letter. Now, a lot of people have read King's letter, but I've read the letter. I always like to know the source. So King's letter is great. I've read it 100 times. But I've also read the letter that he received that made him write what he wrote. And in their letter, they said to him, and I'm paraphrasing, "We don't want you to get the wrong idea, Dr. King. We believe that your cause is right. We just think that your timing is wrong." And so King, when he sat down to respond to them, the jailers would not give him any paper to write on. He started responding to that letter in the margins of the newspapers that he had in the cell with him. And he said to them 4 words that I think is very, very important tonight and during this time within which we live. These 4 words were, time itself is neutral. Time itself is neutral. Then he went on to say that time is never right and time is never wrong. Time is always what we make it. And then he wrote, I am coming to the conclusion that the people of ill will in our society are making a much better use of time than the people of goodwill. He wrote that, this 1963, and he said he was coming to the conclusion that the people of ill will were making a much better use of time than the people of goodwill. And then he concluded the thought with this: we will have to repent in this generation, not merely for the vitriolic words and actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence of the good people. Now, I never go anywhere these days when people are not asking me 2 questions. Number 1, have you ever seen it like this before? My answer is always the same: no, I have not. But it has been like this before. The reason I have not seen it before, and none of you have seen it like this before, because none of us were around in 1876, when we were celebrating the 100th anniversary of our nation's founding. We were founded the nation in 1776. That's the established year. Though some people quibble about whether it was 77. I'm not going to quibble. I wasn't there. So we give birth, and which means we're getting ready in 2 years to celebrate 250 years. We celebrated our 100th year by bringing an end to Reconstruction. That's right. Reconstruction ended, for all practical purposes, with the election of Rutherford B. Hayes as President of the United States over Samuel Tilden in 1876. And by the way, Hayes was elected president of these United States by 1 vote. 1 vote. Elect 185 to 184. And the committee that the House of Representatives sent out to meet with the candidates who were Samuel Tilden from New York, who finished with 184 electoral votes, 1 vote short. Hayes had 165, 20 votes short. And the committee of 3 people, from 3 states, that went out to meet with them to make recommendations to the House of Representatives, were composed of 15 people. It was a 15-member committee. The 20 votes in question were from Florida, Louisiana, and South Carolina. And when they met with the candidates, they decided to give those 20 votes to Hayes, to get him from 165 to 185 on the promise that he would bring an end to Reconstruction. The vote of the committee was 8-2. to 7. So when people tell you, my one vote does not count, remind them that Reconstruction came to an end by one vote. Remind them that Jim Crow became the law of the land by one vote. And when I stood before the National Democratic Convention last year, I addressed Project 2025 saying that Project 2025 is Jim Crow 2.0. So we're here tonight to break our silence. We've been too quiet in the country. We've been too quiet in South Carolina. We've been too lackadaisical. We have got to preserve this democracy. This is a great country in no need of being made great. What we have got to do is muster the energy, raise the voices, find the common ground to work together so that we can make the greatnesses of this country accessible and affordable for all. That's what we got. So if it's healthcare, how can we make healthcare accessible and affordable for everybody? Education, housing, energy, whatever it is that makes this country great, our responsibility is to make it accessible and affordable. And we have to find the common ground to do that. Now, we're not going to always agree. My Lord, I stayed married to the same woman for 58 years. Gillian knew her very well. And so he can tell you, God may bless her, that she was a Gullah Geechee woman. That ought to tell you something. And so I know something about disagreements. But I also know that to be successful in any endeavor, it calls for reconciling differences. It calls for finding common ground. And it happens in the home, in our communities, in our political discourse. Whatever it is, we should reconcile these differences and find common ground. And so tonight, we've decided that we were going to really emphasize veterans. But there's something particularly egregious about saying to people who've given their all, some of whom have given the ultimate sacrifice and have left family with, let's say, the inability to really live a productive life without the services of the Veterans Administration. I want to emphasize the word service. because I think that what is happening in the country today is a sort of violation of that. We call the organizations supporting our veterans the Veterans Services Organization, not the Veterans Corporation. The Veterans Services Organization. We call our Postal Service, not the Postal Corporation, Postal Services. They are there to provide a service. And I know for years now, you've been hearing people run around making headlines saying, we got to treat government like a business. Well, let me tell you something. Thank you so much. That is the biggest. Well, we should not treat government like a business. Businesses exist to make a profit. They cannot exist without making a profit. I know so well. My mother was a tremendous businesswoman. And I know what it takes for businesses to operate. Our veterans will not be at the mercy of any corporation that's beholden to its investors. They should be taken care of by this government that they gave so much to help preserve. And so we wanted to talk about them. And then the big thing about it in the postal services, you may not have focused on this. Now they want to privatize the Veterans Administration. And then they want to privatize the postal services. I want to give you a little number. Do you have this? I don't think they gave you this. I think they misunderstood what I said to them this morning. I'll talk to that because that's why I got this in yellow on here, because I wanted this on a card. There are nearly 73,000 veterans on the staff of the Postal Service. There are 1.2 million veterans who would be put at risk of hunger if we cut $230 billion out of the SNAP program. Now, this may sound strange to a lot of you. And quite frankly, when I first found this out years ago, I thought it was a misrepresentation of the truth. But there are active duty military who receive food stamps because they are eligible based upon family sizes and family income. They are eligible. And we are now talking about getting rid of what we now call SNAP. And according to the figures, 1.2 million veterans will be put at risk of hunger. Now, housing. Over 175,000 veterans are housed in programs that are assisted by the federal government for them to be affordable. And we're now about to put housing security for 175,000 veterans at risk. And last, 80,000 jobs or on the chopping block for the Veterans Affairs. My late wife retired as a librarian at the Veterans Administration Hospital. I know of no one who was more dedicated to the service of veterans than Emily was. I'll never shall forget, we were coming back from Australia some years ago, and because of the distance, we had to stop over in Hawaii for crew rest, which meant we had to spend 24 hours there so the crew could get the necessary rest. And so they asked all of us on the plane, what would you like to do when you get to Hawaii? And people were all telling what they wanted to do for that 24-hour period. And when they got to Emily, she says, I want to go to Pearl Harbor. I didn't know why. I didn't ask. And so they arranged for us to go to Pearl Harbor. So we got on the boat, went out to Pearl Harbor. You know, one of the ways you stay married for 58 years, you don't ask a whole lot of questions. So I didn't ask. Why? We walked through the door, she walked up to the desk, and she said to the lady there, now I know that you all have kept good records of the people who died here. I would like to know, she said, did you all keep the records of the people who survived Pearl Harbor? And the lady said, yes, we do. She said, but I would like to see it. Lady left the desk, went back in the back, and came out with a big cloth folder binder. And she handed it to Emily, and she says, is there anything special you would like to see? She says, yes, I like to see the people from South Carolina, particularly Charleston, who survived. So the lady flipped over and said, well, here's the South Carolina section. Emily turned it around and she went down the list looking for her mother's brother. And she found it. Joseph Henry Washington was on the USS Arizona on that fateful day, December 7th, I believe, 1941. And she looked at it. She put her finger on his name. She closed the book and says, Clyburn, she never knew my first name. We can go back now. But the lady says, no, you got to wait for the next boat to go back. So we had to sit there all day. We took in a tour. But all she wanted to do was see her uncle's name. Because that uncle did not have children. But she and her sister would have never gone to college, but for his veterans benefits that sent them to college. So I know from our own personal experiences that we should not put our veterans at the mercy of investors. We should not put Social Security at the mercy of Wall Street. Y'all remember George W. Bush made the big proposal to privatize Social Security. What you may have forgotten is at the same time he was making that push, there was a big popular investor on Wall Street whose name was Madoff. He was the guy that everybody was giving their money to. And all of a sudden they woke up one day and Madoff had made off with all their money. That's what would happen if we allow our Social Security trust fund to be exposed to Wall Street gamblers. That's what will happen. Our Social Security trust fund should be there for all of us. And it has never in 89 years has not missed a payment. And we should never, ever allow Social Security to become privatized, but that's what's going on in Washington right now. And let me close by saying to those of you who are younger and you are being exposed to all of this foolishness that Social Security is not going to be there for you. Well, let me tell you something. Social Security is there for you right now. R-A-T, right now. Because Social Security is not just about growing old and collecting. Survivor benefits are in Social Security. I know I've got fellow members in Congress who went to college off survivor benefits. And so for young children, there's Social Security there for you now. And so you may have to wait to be 65 or 67 to get that benefit, but you can be 15, 16, and 17, and your parents are there. Their survivor benefits will accrue to you now. And so let's think about how we can find a common ground and do the things that are necessary to make this country's greatness, as Social Security is one of them, accessible and affordable for all. And with that, I'll answer your question. I think I got your stuff too, right?
I think you got my stuff too.
I don't want your stuff.
I want your stuff though.
Okay.
All right, y'all. Uh-oh. I've got the questions in my pocket. So we've got two people, one person on this side, raise your hand with a microphone. John's up there, and then Walter is there with the microphone. So I'm gonna call two names at a time, and then you just stand up and ask your question. If you need your card back, we'll run it back to you, and this congressman will answer it. So we're gonna start with Carol McGrath from Bluffton and Felice LaMarcia from Hilton Head Island. Raise your hand or stand up. Just stand up and they'll come see you.
Who's got the mic?
John, come on, John. Y'all young. Y'all gotta start moving. Let's go. He'll bring it to you. You don't have to come out.
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
And tell me your name so I can put your question down. Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Bring the truth in. And get the truth in. Please help.
Well, the first thing we've got to do, and I have started on this. In fact, I think, was it last night? I did I think CNN with somebody, I can't remember. It was last night. And I was asked a question about something I said a couple of days ago, when I said that part of our problem This is not just a Democratic problem. This is a problem for the country. And this is a problem for our media. And this person took issue with me and brought it up. Well, let me tell you this. The Washington Post has had a significant number of they have not publicized all of the resignations they've had because people have quit because the newspaper has decided that it's not going to write the facts about this administration. I was on Harvard's campus. I spoke at Harvard University the last Monday night of last week. I was on that campus when Harvard made the decision that it was not going to give in to this administration. I went over to New York the next day and sat down for lunch with a former student of mine who is a graduate of Columbia Law School. And he told me at the time that Columbia University is now second guessing the decision they made to go along, and they're not going to go along. That's what it's going to take for us to challenge this. It challenged the lines. Just don't sit quietly while the bad people go around lying and good people accept the lies. So we're going to have to challenge this. I really believe we can shame some of these media people. It's not I just mentioned the Washington Post, but that's not the only one. 60 Minutes.
Yeah.
Their longtime producer has just quit because he's being ordered to do things that is not representative of the truth. And so we got to all make truth squads out of ourselves. And we got to start challenging. So I've been asking people to do some things that maybe I'll step outside of their comfort zones. You know, it may be very comfortable to stay out of the fray. When I mentioned being here at Kennedy Community Center back in the 50s and 60s, you know, I'm a 1961 graduate of South Carolina State, which means that Emily and I just talked about her. This may surprise a lot of you. Emily and I met in jail. We met in jail. March 15th, I never shall forget when we met, 1960. We were challenging the status quo. The status quo at the time says, I could go into the S.H. Cressley on the square, that's now owned by Claflin University, and I could buy school supplies, but I couldn't sit down at the lunch counter and eat a hamburger. The status quo at that time says I could ride the city bus, but I had to sit on the back of that bus, or had to give up my seat if the bus was crowded and a white person came on the bus. We challenged that, and we went to jail for that. But you know what? I never was afraid that we were not going to succeed, because we raised our voices, we organized the vote, we challenged the school administration, because we felt strongly that in the end we would win. So that's what it's going to take. We must challenge it, write letters to these newspapers. You've got to Don't run from it. Don't let it ride. Challenge it. You got to challenge it because our children are not going to feel good about us if we allow this country to become an autocracy. I just don't feel good about us. Yes. Yes, some will, but it's going to be on what I would call a case-by-case basis. I don't think you're going to have any big organized effort. I think you have to look at each issue. And let me give you an example. I didn't miss getting any of South Carolina judges confirmed because I went case by case and I sat down with Senator Graham and we quietly, no press conferences, we got it done. We got $65 billion in the infrastructure bill for broadband because we did it quietly in my conference room. And we got enough Republicans to make that bill a bipartisan. That's why they call it the bipartisan infrastructure bill. It wasn't no big group of them. I think it was only 13. All we need is 5. So yes, I do believe that on a issue by issue, with those numbers going down, we are going to see more and more on the other side that will provide those 5 or 6 votes that we need on issues to get things done. That's why I didn't open that way tonight because you're such, I can look in your faces and tell I didn't need to say what I opened with the other night. I said that, you know, I'm not going to raise my voice. I'm not going to yell at anybody. I do believe that the first sign of a good education is good manners. And I do believe that I've had a pretty good education. But I didn't have to say it tonight. But to me, that's how I try to interact with other members on the floor. Now, you know, the governor and I, Henry McMaster and I, are good friends. We don't agree on things politically. But we worked closely together on broadband. We worked closely together to get that I-95 bridge that we need to get across Lake Marion. And of course, Trump comes in and he froze the money. He froze it. $350 million, $175 million of which is coming from the federal government. He froze it. But I think you all saw it yesterday or in this morning papers. He is unfrozen it. I didn't say a word publicly. But it's been unfrozen. And we're going forward with the process. Yes, ma'am. Those numbers are falling. They are not going to be too public because, as the senator from Alaska has said, that a lot of Republicans are afraid of the reprisals. And so they aren't going to say much. But on the case-by-case basis, yes, we'll get some.
Card from Bluffton. And if you haven't got a question card, please raise your hand and we'll bring one to you if you came in later. Is Marsha Carr here? Where are you? Oh, Marsha Hunter, sorry. Oh, right here. Marsha Hunter. And then we got David Carr from Bluffton. Let's let Marsha go first and then Mr. Carr.
Oh. That's my question. Got a nice way to talk about privatization of Social Security. How much we are not for it.
Right.
I'm concerned. Private.
Right.
I know how important it is.
Absolutely.
And answer my question when.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you very much. And thanks for, well, you know, I'm a South Carolinian through and through. And South Carolina has two mottos. The most popular one is "While I breathe, I hope." That's the one that's on our seal. But you know, we have another motto that's not talked about a whole lot: prepared in mind and resources. That's a South Carolina motto that a lot of people are not aware of. But I live by both those. And that's why when stuff happens, like King's letter, so, you know, this is a great letter, but what led to this greatness? And so that's why I have found the letter that he received, and I try to do that with things like Social Security, so that people will know. It may be of interest to you to know that, you know, I'm one of those. I'm what they call a Harry Truman Democrat. I'm a big fan of Harry Truman. I've been a bit reticent over the years about Franklin Roosevelt, because Roosevelt, when they created Social Security back in 1935, 36, they limited the employment that was covered, did not cover farm workers and domestic workers. That's right. When Social Security came online, they did not allow farm workers and domestic workers to be a part of Social Security. 65% of African Americans in the country at that time were in those two fields of endeavor, and therefore were not covered by Social Security. And so I spent a lot of time trying to make sure that we make up for that mistake. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
Long time.
Well, as you may know, as I said, I think I said this tonight. You know, when you have these town hall, but I can't remember exactly what I said when. But when I was offered the job to teach history at Robert Smalls High School, at the same time, my late wife was offered the job as librarian over on Ladies Island. She vetoed that offer to stay in Charleston. I'm glad she did. I didn't tell her at the time, but public education is very important. I have a daughter, my youngest daughter is on the board of trustees at Richland County. I think that it is important for us to make education affordable and accessible. And I don't understand how, and I know that you're battling this in the legislature. You see it, a benefit of taking public money and give vouchers to go to private schools. And I don't have anything against private schools. I graduated from Mather Academy. There's a Mather here. Part of this facility was the other Mather. There were two Mathers, one in Camden and one here in Beaufort. Same family put up the money for both those schools. Mather School here in Beaufort was a private school. Why? Because the state did not provide education for African Americans at that time. My father was not allowed an education beyond the 7th grade in Kershaw County because that's all the schooling there was for African Americans. Now, he later went to college, but he never could get his degree because the state law says you get to produce the high school diploma. So he was not allowed to go into his senior year in college because he didn't have a high school diploma. Now, public education that's how important public education is. I don't have anything against anybody who want to get a private education. When I went to Mallard Academy, I washed dishes after every meal. I got a scholarship to play football. And that's how I paid. I didn't get a public voucher. So anybody that want to go to private school, that should be available to you. But you ought not be taking public money. Yeah. So I agree with you.
All right, next we have Clifford Henry from Bluffton and Deborah L. Damers of Beaufort. Rachel, please stand for the microphone. Folks can see you. Clifford Henry. Oh, here we go, all the way down. Come on down, Walter
Oh,
and Deborah Damers. Okay.
yes, sir.
What I primarily want to know is how are we gonna stop Trump?
Well, we got to do it at the polls. And I think that and I mean this real sincerely. What I'm going to say now, I really, really mean this sincerely. The first two opportunities to stop Trump will take place this year in the states of Virginia and New Jersey, because they will have gubernatorial elections in those two states. One of them, New Jersey, is a state we need to hold. The other one, Virginia, is a state we need to flip. And so I've been saying to people all over, if you got friends, you got relatives in New Jersey or Virginia, go visit with them as often as you possibly can. Do it on weekends and spend a little time helping them knock on doors. Write to them. You know, it's kind of easy in a state like that allow robocalls or allow phone calls. Call your friends and get some phone numbers and call some people. You know, it'll have a tremendous impact. If you say to somebody, I'm a veteran down here in Beaufort, South Carolina. I gave 23 years fighting for this country. Please go out and vote. And New Jersey may be sort of more industrial, but not Virginia. Virginia will have a tremendous, I think, response to veterans issues. I mean, that is, they've got more veterans in Virginia than we got in South Carolina, and military installations. So really, I think that, I haven't talked to Crystal about this at all, but I think that one of the things the state party could do is to organize little telephone efforts like this and get people to come to your county office and sit around and just let them know, I'm calling from Beaufort, South Carolina, and I'm just urging you to go out and help protect our veterans. That kind of effort, people, you calling me from Beaufort? Yeah, Because what you do in Virginia this year could very well have a big impact on how my husband or wife or son or daughter will get the benefits they may get from Veterans Affairs. I just think little things like that, we've got to find some creative ways to get people to know that this is not just about them, that what you're doing up there in New Jersey could have a tremendous impact on those of us who live within the shadows of the Marine Air Station or Paris Island, not to mention Fort Jackson and Charleston Air Force Base, the Mine Warfare School. South Carolina is a veterans-friendly state, and we ought not let Trump mess it up. Yes. Well, you know, what we should not do is turn on each other. Let's turn to each other. As I said earlier, all of us would not always agree on everything. We have worked, talk, and find common ground. I remember early in my career, I was about 25 years old when I took over the Neighborhood Youth Corps in Charleston. I was 26 when I came to Beaufort to help John Gasson start the Neighborhood Youth Corps here in Beaufort. I got a call one day from a lady whose name was Rowena Tobias. I don't know if anybody's here of the Jewish faith, but I knew Rowena Tobias. Her father started the synagogue there around Trad Street over in Charleston. She called me and invited me to her home and down on Battery, South Battery. So I went and well, she said for high tea. I didn't know anything about no high tea. But I went. And sure enough, she had the tea, and the two of us sat in the parlor of her room, and she said this to me. I've never forgotten it. She says, I have been watching you for some time now, and I think you have a tremendous career ahead of you. And she started telling me the history of Charleston. And how Charleston had the #1 port on the East Coast, and how that got lost. She says, everything we did here in Charleston, we sat down, we talked it through, save for one thing, race. She said, we talked about everything until the question came, race. And every time race came up, we stopped talking. She's not asking you to come here today because I want you to make me a promise. Promise me that you won't stop talking. And that has stayed with me. I think, Billy, you may have known Rowena. That has stayed with me. And so I say to people all the time, we're going to have problems. We're going to have disagreements, but don't stop talking. Keep talking. We can find the common ground.
All right, next we have Patty Paulson and Catherine Klinger of Beaufort. Right here, Walter. Patty, Toussait.
That's my grandson there, you know.
Patty not with us? You're Patty? Catherine Klinger? Oh, I'm so sorry. There she goes. Right there. Okay.
I think she's done, so, and I'm very happy to see you.
Yeah,
Or
do we have, what, we had a slide that I put up over in summertime. I was looking to see if it's still here. Do we have the slide with that 14th Amendment on it? You don't have it? Well, the key to that is the 14th Amendment. And here's why I have been fearful like you are. Because the 14th Amendment slavery was ended really not by the Emancipation Proclamation, because it was only good. It was an executive order that comes to an end with the end of the presidency. So that's why Abraham Lincoln fought so hard for the 13th Amendment. The whole movie, Lincoln, was about trying to get the 13th Amendment. And once the 13th Amendment was put in place, that's what ended slavery. But the 14th Amendment was put in place to give due process and equal protection of laws. And so there's a group of people running around the country right now who's saying that the 14th Amendment may not mean what we say it means, because it should only apply to the formerly enslaved. And they'll make I'm not making this up. And they're making the argument that there's nobody in the country today that's formerly enslaved. So the 14th Amendment could very well be null and void. That's what the argument they're making. And so we have to, that's why it's so important for us to really wrap our arms and minds around these issues, because they're making these extraneous arguments grounded in their imaginations in order to get their way. And a lot of them feel that they've got the votes on the Supreme Court now to get them to that end. That's what's so dangerous about so much of what's going on today. And so I agree with you that the 14th Amendment, quite frankly, could very well be at danger. If you look at some of these discussions that's going on, they are serious. These people are not playing. I agree. I agree. And we've got to make sure that they're wrong. Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I wanted you to see it, because in that 14th Amendment, it says it ticks to the issue that she is concerned about, and that is the word persons. Persons. So you're right, because the language itself says persons living in the United States or do this. So it has nothing to do with citizenship. So if you really, hold to the language, you would be right and they're wrong, but they are. That's the argument. Thank you for that.
Catherine Klinger, I'm from Beaufort. My question was pretty convoluted, but basically, I'm very happy with what some of the judges around the country are doing. really pleased with, Dan Hall and what he did going to El Salvador. I'm excited that Harvard is fighting.
Right.
But I feel, I'm unsure about what's happening in Congress with the Democratic Party. I know we all own the Senate or the House, and so we don't have a lot we can stand up for, but I feel like the party's a little bit fractured. And I know you're on the inside, I'm on the outside, but I wonder how you feel about that.
Well, I understand your worry. I understand your concern. And quite frankly, the party is a bit fractured. And it's because last November was a real body blow to a lot of people. People had a hard time, and some people are still having a hard time getting over that because people just did not feel that the country would take that direction, and it did. And so it's like regaining your footing. So people did were in shock and awe. But I think we are regaining our footing. I can feel it as I travel around. I can see it. I was very buoyed on that campus Monday of last week in the kind of interactions that I've had with people. It recently tell me that people are beginning to regain their footing, and that we're all able to get through this, but we got to be vigilant. Now, I study history almost every day. I just finished my third book. And this book I call The First A, the book that I've just finished. Little Brown is not going to release it until later this year, and I think they want to wait until after the November elections. But I call it The First A. These are the 8 African Americans that served in Congress from South Carolina before me. A lot of people think I'm the first one. No, I'm number 9. There were 8 before me, one of whom was, well, 2 of them was from Beaufort, but one was Robert Small, and the other was Thomas E. Miller. We're both from Beaufort. The problem is there are 95 years between number 8 and number 9. And that's what this book is about. What led to those 95 years, and the fear that I have that if we don't regain our footing and do the things that are necessary, we could see a lot of years before there's a number 10. So I think that we are getting there if we just maintain. I'm trying hard. We have begun to evaluate everything based on that which is monetary. And we have to be careful about that. Everybody says how much money that is, how much money that it's going to make, and how much money that. There's some things that must undergird money. My father, the minister, used to preach sermons about the love of money. It didn't say money is the root of all evil. People will sometimes say money is the root of all evil. That's not what the Bible says. The Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. So there's a difference in the two. And so I think what we have to do is really focus on things, focus on each other, and we'll get through this. But we aren't going to get there if we put all our love in the wrong places.
The 14th.
You got the 14th Amendment? Where's the gentleman? It's up here, okay. Look what it says. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person. See, so that's what you're talking about. And that's why they're wrong. The citizen part is separate from persons. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property. And that's what they're doing to these people. So when they tell you it's citizen, no, it's about person. So thank you so much. Well, y'all didn't do too bad after all.
All right, we got John Heath from Beaufort and Jeannie Raynard from Beaufort. Oh, you do the white Robert, not Robert, Walter.
Thank you. You kind of answered most of my questions, and I don't want to sound like, a person without hope, because I do have hope. I think it's pretty good. And I want every piece beginning to be implemented. How do we train them?
We don't. We don't. What we've got to do, in my not so humble opinion, is we've got to challenge it. Remember, Project 25 is a proposal. So much of what they are doing, or what's in that proposal, needs congressional approval. We got to elect people to office who will not vote to approve that foolishness. That's why this part of Beaufort is so important. When people pledge themselves to that document that you know from your studies, and anybody that look at those issues in that 900-page document, you know what the consequences could very well be if these things were to become the law of the land. And so we've got to make sure that we don't allow people to get elected to office who are pledged to carrying out those policies laid out in those pages. So this next election is going to be very, very important. Now, what happens in these two states I mentioned, Virginia, those are state elections that are subject to this year. That's the gubernatorial elections, state legislatures in Virginia, but the national people will not be exposed to the vote until the even numbered years, which would be 2026. But what happens is when you develop a trend, it catches on. And so these two elections will have a big impact on the thought process when people are getting ready to run in 2026, as well not to give up. Because if we were to lose these two states, some people will lose hope. And that's what we got to work against and losing hope. Yes, sir.
Violation of common control. Congressional leadership, are they should have standing because they're really appropriate to legislation program to appropriate money. We need that money spent on the program that you as mentioned your fellow members actually voted on. Responsibility, not money.
Right.
and Democratic leadership, the action to actually go after that. Because you've got the law on your side, and in fact, most 90% of the cases that are being brought against programs are getting
Absolutely. In fact, he's losing more than 90%. And I think you're so right. And thank you for that issue, because you're right on target. Yes. I went back to the Appropriations Committee. As you know, I've been in leadership for a long time, but when I left leadership, I went back to the Appropriations Committee, and because of my seniority, I was allowed to become the ranking member on what we call transportation and HUD in the Appropriations Committee. I went there because transportation, I-95, the new bridge, HUD, housing. And I'm not going to have press conferences every day, but I am always going to be looking for a way to get a vote out of the committee that I can take to the floor. I want you to rest assured that I'm going to be very diligent and vigilant. In fact, I often talk about Thomas Jefferson is given credit for this, but some historians say he never said it. I don't know if he said it or not, but I've always given him credit. The price of liberty is eternal vigilance. And I want you to know, not just me, but I keep a cadre of friends in these committees. And we're going to work hard to overcome that. And now, if we can get a good enough vote in the House, then the Senate will be able to stop them. They've got enough votes to beat us in the House. But if we get any semblance of a bipartisan vote in the House, the Senate will have something to work with. Believe me, I'm working on that. Thank you.
All right, Sumner of London and Griffin Becker of Charleston. Ed or Griffin? Ed, Griffin is still or Griffin is still?
I have a couple of questions. I'm very curious. Behind closed doors, when with your Republican colleagues, and Trump may not know what they're saying, what do they really think of what's going on?
Well, now there are a lot of people saying that we're moving toward a constitutional crisis. I don't say that. We're already there. We're already there. We are in a crisis situation when it comes to the Constitution. And I think that most of my Republican colleagues know that. Some of them welcome that. But I think enough of them don't. Not a whole lot. But I think there are enough Republicans who, given the right amount of support or cover, as some would like to say, will challenge that. The reason I think that is, quite frankly, I won't betray confidence, but believe me, there are a lot of Republicans who think we're heading in the wrong direction. And I think that's why you see those numbers we got now. I don't know if y'all saw the new numbers came out this morning, but Trump is lower than any president has ever been at this particular junction. And he's gonna get lower. You had a second question? Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, this is what it takes. Is what it takes. Because nobody wants to stand alone. Nobody wants to stand alone. When they see those numbers like that, they see the reporting of meetings like this. I tell you, I was at Wofford. This event was at Wofford College night before last. I started getting phone calls yesterday from people so moved by what they saw and heard up at Wofford. And I'll tell you what, the thing that surprised me, because most media have been thinking that people came to these meetings just to raise a ruckus. That's not what came up at Beaufort. And one of the reporters that talked to me on yesterday about it was amazed. He said, people are really concerned because people were expressing themselves like you expressing themselves tonight. You're out here yelling, but you have some concerns and you want these concerns addressed. And like you say, you aren't going to get them addressed until you create an atmosphere or within which to resolve some of these issues. And so John West used to tell me, John West was the governor that brought me into state government. And he called me into his office one day and he said, he always called me Jim Clive, and it is one word to him. So long time before the internet, there's no space in between. He says, you catch many more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. And so his whole thing to me all the time was, you maintain as much honey in your expressions as you possibly can. So that's why when people say to me all the time, you seem to be so even keeled. How can you do that? Well, believe me, I'm sometimes burning up inside, but I try hard to maintain an atmosphere of honey. Okay.
Thanks, Michael, for being here. My question for you is a bit long, but I hope you don't mind it. Bear with me. Congressman Clyburn, when President Obama was elected in 2008, Mitch McConnell swore that he would be a one-term president. And while he was unsuccessful in ensuring this, but despite having a minority in all three branches of government, Mitch McConnell and the GOP were successful in blocking, stalling, and neutering all measures of the Obama administration, most notably blocking the Supreme Court nomination of Mayor Calvin Gunning the Affordable Care Act. My question to you is, why are we not doing the same thing to the Trump administration?
Well, there are two ways I would like to address that. The first one is this. They didn't stop everything. We got the Affordable Care Act. Now the Supreme Court, invalidating it, added this contract stuff that allowed the states to opt out, as we've done in South Carolina with Medicaid, and have not expanded Medicaid, and they've done that using that Supreme Court decision. Well, Obama was successful on a lot of fronts. They did stop his Supreme Court nominee because it was subjected to the filibuster. Now remember, there's the 1957 Civil Rights Act that Strom Thurmond set the record, filibustering. Yeah. For the opposite reason, absolutely. Well, that was That was a 1957 act. It wasn't a 64 act. The filibuster didn't work in 64 or 65. And we got the Civil Rights Act of 1964. We got the Voting Rights Act of 1965. We got the Fair Housing Law of 1968. We got the amendments to the Civil Rights Act of 1972 because we were able to elect filibuster-proof Congresses. What has happened is that the filibuster, we did get it reduced from 2/3, 67, down to 60, but the filibuster is still there. Democrats have always argued against filibustering, especially these kinds of issues, and we just don't have a stomach for that. You cannot find, there may be one or two, but most Democrats are not going to do the things that a lot of our Republican colleagues will do to stop progress. So all I can tell you is that if we get the votes, we can cut off some of the filibusters, but the filibuster, they are used. Now, I will tell you this, the filibuster is going to be used going forward because the Democrats, they don't have 60 votes to bring some of these issues to the floor. And the Democrats are not going to give them the votes. Sir? Well, he could have come out against it, but he was not going to stop it. You got to have the votes. No matter what you may say, I'm against this, I'm against that. But when it comes to the House, you got to have 218 votes. When it comes to the Senate, you got to have 60 votes to put it on the floor. So Schumer, what caused the problem was his expressions, not what he did. He was not going to stop it. Not going to stop it because he doesn't have the votes.
Great.
Okay.
Betsy. Kathy.
Right here. Where's AC? Oh, yeah.
To our first protest in Columbia on, not my President's Day, because there was nothing going on around here. When we got there were no young people. There were very few, and were right there at the Capitol. The demographics were very similar to this room. So the baby boomers carried the first protest, and we continue to do that. What are we doing to get the young people out to vote?
There's another one. Well, I'm going to let Crystal handle that, but I will say this. What I try to impress upon young people is the fact that this country responds to youth. It does. It may rely upon age and experience, but the country responds to young people. And so I try to get them to understand that if this is what you really want, you got to go out and take it. When we were at South Carolina State, we couldn't even have an NAACP meeting on the campus. Can you believe that? On the campus, we couldn't have an NAACP meeting. We were not even allowed to elect our own student body president. we had to vote on people from a list provided by the administration. I'm serious. And I'll never forget, on that day when Emma and I met, and we were walking back to the campus from the jail. True story. I'll never forget this. And we were talking about what we were up against. And I said that night to her, I said, you know what? The first thing we're going to have to do is get our house in order. I said, we're down here trying to integrate lunch counters and we're trying to do all this. And we ain't got no freedoms on that campus. We went back that night and we started planning, and Gilbert will tell you, South Carolina State, people don't realize this, was the first HBCU with a co-ed that elected a woman to be president of the student body. Catherine Peppers from Columbia, South Carolina, we elected her because we rejected, when the administration came out with their list, we rejected it. And we wouldn't vote for anybody on that list. We got Catherine Peppers to run. Now, Gilly may have wanted to run, and I may have wanted to run, but there was one rule we can get around. You had to have a certain grade point average. We couldn't get around that rule. So we got Catherine Peppers, who had the grade point average. But seriously, and I tell young people all the time, we didn't ask anybody permission. And so I said, you don't ask permission. You're a registered voter. You got strength. And it's biblical. It's biblical. We elders are called because we know the way. Youth, because you have the strength. And there must be a balance of knowledge and strength, to get this done. So I tell young people all the time, I'm perfectly willing to help you with the knowledge, but I got to have you because you've got the strength. And together we can get this done. And so I think that what we have to do is talk to young people, let them know the value that they bring to this process. Crystal, before her, Jamie Harrison. Jamie Harrison came into my life when he was an 11th grade student. He was in the 11th grade, and I saw a future in him. And I nurtured him, kept him in my orbit. And look what happened. Ralph Dawson, who I sat down with at Columbia University on Monday of last week, got kicked out of school when he was in 11th grade over in Charleston. I went to his house. I wasn't in teaching at the time. I had already left the classroom. I took him back to school, made him stand in front of the class and apologize for the teacher. It took him 15 minutes, but he apologized. And what happened? He got a full scholarship to Yale University, a full scholarship to Columbia Law School, but he had a chip on his shoulder, and he just walked around with that chip. That's why he became such a good lawyer. And he became the lawyer for American Express. So you have to let young people know that you have value and we need you. And I'll be here to help guide you, but I need your strength. And I think that the young people will respond. I've never had a problem getting young people to respond.
A little bit further to that, engaging young people is different. And if you haven't noticed, the staff in our office are very, old enough to be most of their moms. And that's one of the things that we're really working hard to do is to meet, we always say meet people where they are.
gonna go and put in to the park. They're probably not gonna. I mean, they don't even watch the regular TV, you know what I'm saying? Like, they don't even know what's going on. It's kind of like TikTok. They don't know that at 24-year-old son. And anything he calls and asks me about it is true, it's something he got off of me.
When no hands are put driving our kids to soccer, volleyball, baseball and stuff, so we have to plan something that our community, everybody of different age get engaged and come and attend.
Yeah, and that's another thing.
I don't see that kind of
Yeah, different.
no parents.
So folks who are planning these programs, we haven't really focused, but putting it in a time where you can, where young people are gonna show up. We feel our family parties, all of our young men, all these groups we have, we are really good. It does matter what time we have. I'm not gonna double that into the trying to engage them, you guys see that they're going to be attracted to you. And that's really what we're trying to do at a county party as well as making sure that our county parties are simply the switch. Because we haven't been thinking what we need to do. Now, this is
Mhm. Well, as Crystal just said, we're all working very hard trying to find the magic, the sauce that's necessary. And she's right. I think a lot of us, I know when I first was exposed to the internet or even computers, I thought a computer was a passing fad or something. You know, a lot of us really have got to work a little harder, getting used to how people communicate today. I have 3 daughters, and it's amazing. There's 11 years between my oldest and my youngest, and they are totally different in the way they approach. Now, both of them are very political, very political. Angela, the youngest, is on the school board. And quite frankly, when she came to me and told me she wanted to run for the school board, I tried to discourage her. And I said, Angie, you don't want to do that because you're going to get all my enemies. You won't get my friends, but you won't get my enemies too. Well, she said, well, Dad, I want to do this. And so when she told me how she was going to do it, it was foreign to me. It was foreign to me. But you know what? She got more votes than all the others put together because she knew how to do that social media stuff, which I didn't know. But she made a believer out of me. And so we are working out trying to figure out how we can best. But the problem you get is the moment you perfect one medium, you got another one. Like now, I've asked my staff to put me on Blue Sky. Yeah, because I'm doing Blue Sky now. Well, Blue Sky wasn't around 2 years ago. What happened, everybody was on Twitter. So Elon Musk purchases Twitter and turns it into his thing. So I said, man, get me off Twitter because there's nobody following me. They're trolling me. You know, so he put me over on Blue Sky. So these are things that we really are trying to work through. And you're right, it's a challenge, but we're going to have to measure up to it and get it done because this country is worth saving.
lot of times, you is the best way to talk about candidates. Like trying to convince folks to run for office is no easy deal. And trying to convince people who are incredible and people that can really vote in the district is absolutely hard. I spend a lot of time last time trying to find people to run for Congress. You know, if up in Greenwood, up there, I'm really looking for a white person, a white name, not for you. First of all, I think you're doing a great job, but why would I want to get in? You know what I'm saying? Like, they're very loud, they don't want to run the movie. So it's not as easy as you think, you can say, oh, well, we've got all these India offices, why can't we not run? We're really working hard, and Catherine, I want to give her a round of applause. We're, people proud of them. So it is definitely difficult work, it's challenging work to do in the cycle when you keep moving, to find folks like you to come on and be a sacrifice for what it is, you know, give people something to vote for. So we're working hard. I think we're going to have a pretty strong ticket of candidates come 2026. We're going to find somebody who's going to get things ready. Somebody who I believe is college on Social Security benefits, survival benefits. We're going to find somebody that will run for governor, AG, often. So if you want to run, I'm sitting in the let us know. We get you. You take that, you do the things that we're doing that y'all probably don't even see, you know. So I will tell you to make sure you support your county party and to also support your state party. It doesn't, you don't have to be a super rich person. Those gradual monthly dollars add up so fast. You can give the state party $10 a month. You know, a bunch of people do that, that's money, right? That's how we pay our life bill, that's how we cover it. So please remain invested locally on the state level. That's right now, I'm talking about county and do those things and show up and help. If you can't give, please volunteer your time, dial, call, knock doors, write postcards, write letters. Don't stop fighting. It's working, I think. We're all here, we're all in it together. And thank y'all so much for giving us your time. And don't forget your yellow card. If you're trying to get everybody to go to the next page, and you have things to say, please give us a yellow card. Thank you.